Hello, and I think we're live. This is Evo Haining, and I am joined here today by Mikey Siegel. Hi, Mikey. How you doing?
Hey, Evo, doing great. Thanks for having me. So this impromptu live conversation is kind of cool.
Yeah. So we've been doing open office hours here at Playable Agency to help answer some of your virtual event and experience design questions so that we can make it easier for everyone to connect and collaborate and play together. So, Mikey, you have been doing some very interesting work in collaborative flow and in participation and interactivity for a long time, as long as I've known you. Can you tell me a little bit about what you're working on right now?
Yeah, for sure. I am consulting with a well-known band, and they have a album that they want to premiere live. And their interests very much align with my own interests. And those really at heart include this exploration of how can you do a live experience for a large number of people, meaning 10,000 people plus, where the interaction is real time, so it's happening right now in the moment, and the interaction is meaningful, co-creative. And so I'll kind of specify kind of those two things. So on the co-creative side, what that means is that everyone, the 10,000 people, are actually a part of something that is emerging in the space. That their actions, whether the action is through their video camera, whether the action is through their mouse, whether the action is through their space bar, there's an active participation and an active influence on what is emerging in the space. So that could be creating art together, that could be solving a problem together, that could actually even be collective decision making or playing a game together, and we're going to show an example of that in just a second. And then the second thing is this meaningful aspect, which is that it's not just the novelty of it. It's not just like, oh, cool, wow, we're doing something all together, which, by the way, if you can get that far, that it's cool, that's already a big accomplishment. But actually, there's a deeper vision for what this conveys to the group. And I'm actually going to read to you what the band told me when I asked them, what do you ultimately want to convey? What kind of meaning, what kind of experience do you want to get across to your audience? And the answer was, something that reminds us that we're all part of the same. What we do affects one another. If we come together, we can create something beautiful that reminds us that we are all alike. And this is about sort of the original promise of technology to bring us deeply together. And it's about actually using technology for that original, deeper purpose. And so, Eva, I know you have one of my favorite examples queued up of a kind of what I think is one of the classic iconic examples of what I would call kind of like collective decision-making / sort of emergent collective consciousness facilitated by technology.
Absolutely. So we're going to watch a little bit of Lauren Carpenter from SIGGRAPH, and this is in 91.
This is almost 30 years ago, which is kind of
right.
Crazy.
So this is Pong.
Yeah. So this paddle is red on one side and green on another side. And what you're about to see is that a large audience is going to enter into a concert hall, and everyone's going to have a paddle in their hand. And you can see there that they're now realizing that the technology can recognize their paddles, but it can also recognize which side is red and which side is green. But then all of a sudden they see a Pong game, and they don't have an explanation, actually. All they know is that their paddle is meaningful in some way, the red and the green. And what they start to learn as an audience is that on one side of the audience is controlling one paddle, and the other side of the audience is controlling the other paddle, and green makes the paddle go up and red makes the paddle go down. And so the whole left side of the audience turns their paddle green, the paddle will shoot up to the top. And so somehow this audience needs to learn how to have the paddle just go to just that one spot where the ball is. And if this was 5 people, they could be like, Bill, you'd go green, Jen, you go left. They could coordinate. But it's like 2,500 people. And so you can't coordinate at that kind of individual level anymore.
Right.
It's some different kind of process that's emerging.
And what Lauren says about this here is that this, we don't understand why this worked. We don't understand how the audience was able to basically help make these decisions together in real time, except by the feedback of that interaction loop that they're all in together, right? So we're talking about a massive interaction loop, not a sort of single, 1 player, 2 player, multiplayer, but this is massively multiplayer media here. And there's a lot of different types of massively multiplayer media. So it sounds like you're trying to create a massive multiplayer experience of some sort. That might include different types of media and that engages a band or the band experience as part of that play. Now, do you see this becoming a primarily virtual engagement, or is it virtual and live physical, or how does that play out for you?
So we're talking about both live, virtual, mixed, but I think mainly for this conversation, I'm really excited purely the virtual side. So this would be a large number of people purely virtually, and part of it would be this emergent experience that's happening virtually. We could call it like a large gameplay or something like that. But another part of it is this sort of structured environment, including a kind of a narrative, an unfolding narrative that is holding the themes of the music, but also holding the music itself. Because don't forget, right, or as for those that are listening, don't forget, this is a live premiere of music, right, of a band that's actually creating this music.
Right. So we talked a little bit about platforms that might engage with collaboration using media, for example, video or other things. And you had mentioned Pixel Place, which is something that I've played just a little bit with. Do you want to talk to me a little bit about what you were thinking with this type of platform in terms of massive play?
Yeah, here's what I love about this platform. First of all, I'm looking at the map, and the map looks completely different than the last time I visited, which was yesterday. And it's partly a shit show, and it's partly really interesting. And here's what's amazing about it. There are, hundreds of people, it could be thousands, that are all changing 1 pixel at a time on this map. And the incredible thing is all 1,000 people could, in theory, be actively changing this map at the same time. It's like a collective kind of drawing. But if everyone was just drawing in isolation, it would look like chaos, right? But yesterday, when I went onto the Pixel Place, I saw someone creating a drawing. It was like a little set of concentric boxes. It was pretty simple drawing, but I saw what they were trying to make. I could understand it. And so I started helping them. And so all of a sudden, me and this person, who I have no idea who they are beyond like what pixels they're changing on the screen, started drawing together and collaborating on this drawing. And we could each interpret each other's intentions in this kind of context. And so for me, what this represents is an example that I could find of truly large scale, real time, collaborative co-creation.
Right. And it's fascinating.
In a real pure form.
There's so many things happening here. I mean, you can see what's on the screen, and it's a pretty wide variety of experiences, including some stuff that, might be considered hate speech in other platforms. And so it's interesting to watch how this sort of emergent behavior takes shape. And many of these sorts of, peer-to-peer creative platforms, I mean, there's a whole chessboard up here that looks pretty cool, but there's a pretty wide variety of things going on over here. Looks like
a lot of
some
penises.
fan art. There's a lot of sexy vibe kind of things in there, right? So this is an interesting example. I don't know if this meets the meaningful type of interaction exactly what you're going for, but it could be the type of play that you're trying to engage in terms of getting the what has been a passive audience to become an interactive, creative part of the story, right? They're adding to the world that the band is creating through their experiences.
Yeah, and there's a sense of agency here where like, even if there's 1,000 people, like I can change a pixel and it's part of this imagery, right? And it's that kind of, it's not abstract, it's tangible, my influence in this unfolding stream.
Right. So have you looked at platforms where there are already massive creative experiments happening? Let's say, for example, there are concerts and festivals happening in coordination with Minecraft, right? So people are building concert venues and then having these kinds of play happening within an existing platform versus using a new platform in a different way. And so it depends on where your audience is, right? And each band is different and their audiences are different in terms of whether they're comfortable in an Instagram plus an art project type of play, or if they're wanting to do something that's in their existing virtual world of choice. And we do see a lot more sort of, concerts, raves and things happening. Obviously, Travis Scott and Fortnite and those sorts of things, John Legend, more and more concerts happening in VR, like in the Wave and other platforms like that. It sounds like you're interested in potentially both the 2D or even the 3D, depending on what's going to work for this particular project.
Yeah, like it could be as simple as, and I had, listed another example. It could be as simple as people's mouse cursors all moving around a screen, which you could do in Chrome, in JavaScript, using just basic, web-based tools, to as complex as a 3D full 3D environment, like Fortnite or like Minecraft or something like that. And so, here, is thousands of people's mouse cursors, and it's literally this kind of cute journey with little prompts that the music video takes you on. Right now, it's like everyone's following the green dot, right? And then it's like, point to where you're from, and so it's this kind of emerging journey. And again, none of these are specifically what I'm imagining, but they all point to a quality, an underlying quality. And in this case, I really appreciate the simplicity of it, right? This is a very low bandwidth, low technical complexity. You don't have to create an entire virtual world to just track 1,000 people's mouse position. It's doable, right?
And a different version, but also in the music video format, we've seen, for example, people coloring sheets of coloring pages and then having those rotoscoped together into a music video where it's everyone's art creates the music video. We've seen a couple of different examples where it is sort of these, it's a relatively simple interaction, and it could be digital or even physical. In this case, it seems like this is done in a very digital and lightweight way, like it could be filmed in a day, right? It seems like for this band, they're looking to do some fun and experimental things, but there's some room to maybe grow a whole endeavor. Are there potentially multiple music videos, or is this an event-based experience, or is it specifically like a campaign? Would you call it?
It could be either. It could be event-based, or it could be a recurring, like, monthly event or something that builds a community each time and maybe has a narrative that sort of continues. I think there's an openness for all those possibilities.
Got it. And virtual listening rooms and spatialized audio using audio first platforms, is that something that this band has been engaged in at all yet? Like there's audio platforms like Discord or Clubhouse, but there's also 3D spatialized audio platforms. High Fidelity, for example, we produced in Nowhere this weekend, and I can show you a little bit of what Nowhere looks like. But no.
Oh, cute.
Great music, by the way.
It's original.
Oh, this is cracking me up. I love it.
That looks terrific.
Yeah, really cool.
So I'm going to show you a different video, but in the Nowhere world, each person is represented as a nonagon. So instead of a flat 2D video, you're basically like a sphere that is a spatialized audio experience where you can talk to the other audience members in the space. So it's not avatar-based virtual embodiment. We do a number of events in the avatar worlds as well, right? So fully 3D. But Nowhere is this sort of I would say like a 2.5D experience. And you can then have listening rooms that are spatialized audio. You can have a streaming experience as well as conversation zones. So you can go meet up with 5 friends, having a conversation while you're at a concert. And both in Mozilla Hubs and in some of these other platforms, you end up creating listening rooms, which could be 20 people, or like in High Fidelity, those have like 100 people or more. But you then create multiple listening rooms that become like small social groups within the larger concert experience. So often a virtual event might have hundreds of rooms that are each 20 people or 100 people instead of having one room that's 10,000 people. And that's partially because of the way servers and streaming media work in terms of the interactions. If you try to get everyone into the same space, that experience will often crash for people. And so it really depends, right? This is why I was asking you about whether you're working in a traditional game environment, right? And that has a whole different layer of support versus trying to do something that's more ad hoc, independent, straight to your audience. If you're trying to do something straight to the audience, there are tools like High Fidelity, which is spatialized audio. You can create listening rooms. You can design them to be exactly what you want, and people can interact there. They can be in conversation and play, and they can do certain types of things there.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Well, so just to hone it in, so I'm, High Fidelity sounds cool, and I certainly haven't heard of it, but I am familiar with the options that exist in sort of the 2.5D realm. There's a number of platforms that are emerging now, especially during these times where you can cruise around, you have a little flat avatar or some kind of spatial orientation, you can have localized content areas, you can have chat, you can even have video chat, that's localized where certain people can just hear you and see you, that is based on where you are. So I'm familiar with all of that. And that's, I would say, not what I'm looking for.
Okay.
I would say, like, quite specifically what I'm looking for is expressed by those examples I gave, where it really is like we're like really creating something together, and we're not just chatting,
Right.
and we're not just receiving a stream of content, but we actually are building something. We are part of a creative emergent process that is happening in real time. And my question for you is like, you mean you've been around the space for a long time? I mean, you for a long time. You've probably seen so much. You've probably interacted with some of the great designers and creators and technologists working in the space. My question for you is first, like what are what examples have you seen of this? Because I have to guess that there have been examples dating back online 20 plus years of people attempting to do this stuff. And probably if I were to like really scour sort of more the academic side of the literature, in terms of these, kind of like SIGGRAPH and other, conferences that kind of explore in this domain, I'd probably find a lot of that stuff. My question is, does this ring any bells for you of any classic examples or cool past experiments that you remember having seen that kind of cover these bases?
I think when we see creative experiments for the masses, in
Mhm.
collaboration, we often see them in smaller groups, right? So we'll see maybe hundreds of people involved. There are small numbers of projects where there have been millions of people involved in the process, but
Mhm.
honestly, very few people take those on because they're high risk for a
Mhm.
number of reasons, right? So anytime you're engaging user-generated content, like in the pixel art example, for example, there's a fair amount of noise in the system that may be considered either abusive or hateful or difficult to manage, right? So that's a high
For sure.
risk interaction that very few people tend to fund and produce because of that risk. We have certainly seen experiments like this happen, but they often don't go beyond the experiment phase. They very rarely make it to the masses. I would say there are a handful of experiments around game shows and game show mechanics that work in this way, but again, the collaboration almost never is taken to massive level. It's usually managed in smaller groups, in part because of the legal ramifications of that too, right? There are a couple of large-scale user-generated content projects related to video, and there are some that are related to interactions that are happening through, let's say, a game website. Some of the more classic examples use games that are independent, like what we saw earlier. I don't know, are you familiar with itch.io and some of the more independent games that happen on itch? Outside of so there's, in the gaming space, right, these kinds of platforms fall into the platforms that you'll find on Steam, for example, multiplayer gaming like Jackbox, which is a game show that can be played virtually, but it's not going to create a virtual interaction that is meaningful. It's just play, right? Or there are virtual worlds.
Wait, is Jackbox a specific game or it's a type of game?
Jackbox is a whole series and type of game that operate like virtual game shows, and you can play them in a streaming window with thousands of people. So you can have 10,000 people playing along on a Jackbox game, and it's you buy the games in Steam and then you run them yourselves. So it's like running a game show in a streaming window. So that's one model that works for light interaction. And we're using those, for example, for virtual events to have the social hour after the conference where people just want to play and connect and do something together that feels like a fun activity. Nothing is meaningful or created in that, right? So it's just play. So what you're describing is something where it rolls up into something beautiful at the end. Maybe it's a music video, or there's some sort of shared experience that becomes a new product, right? Is that what I'm hearing there? There's something that is created out of the momentum of the collaboration itself.
Yeah, and even and most importantly, it's that the process itself is creative. That the actual experience of it, you feel like you are a part of something and building something that's emerging.
So I don't know, did you attend much of the virtual Burning Man this year in Black Rock City multiverses?
No, although that probably would have been a juicy space for ideas. Is there anything that you saw there that you think is worth revisiting?
A few. So the multiverses of Burning Man this year were 8 different Playa multiverses, including 2D and 3D environments. They were deeply co-creative in the sense that there were over 100 art projects just in BRCVR, which is in the AltSpace platform. AltSpace is run by Microsoft and has its own ecosystem there, but they had well over 10,000 people actively engaged in whether it's play with those camps or creating those camps.
And were there are there any that come to mind, like specific either creators, like names of creators, or specific projects that you thought would be good to reference with respect to what I'm talking about here?
I think Very few of them were generative in the sense that the interactions in real time created something more than just the art. And part of that was the limitations of these platforms. And so a lot of them were built on platforms that were not designed for deep interaction. So let's say Second Life, for example, which has been around for almost 20 years and has been hosting Burning Man virtually for 15 years, is far easier to do a radically collaborative experience where something is created, whether it's using the data or using the media. You can actually, there's enough interactive capacity, code, and the ability to do something with that code in the platform. Most platforms don't offer that. So you
which platform was that?
That's in Second Life in particular. And there's a
Second
small
Life.
number of platforms where
so you think Second Life is capable of this kind of interaction?
The challenge with Second Life is that it doesn't scale very well necessarily to large groups. This is where we've worked with, creating lots of small meeting spaces, but also sometimes using Mozilla Hubs, for example, creating conferences where lots of small spaces roll up into a larger conference. So I think I may have sent you some examples of that from other conferences earlier this year.
So is it yours? I mean, do you think what I'm trying to do has never been done? Because or that you've never seen it done? Because I haven't.
I've seen similar examples. So let's say
like what?
Having the semantic process at a concert then light up the art. So at Coachella, for example, there were projects where the interactions of the audience changed the art pieces. Right, we've seen this at Burning Man too, where the interactions of 10,000 people change the art itself in some way, whether that's taking their messages and bringing it into the art, or changing the expression of the piece.
Got it. So this is like a social media based interaction, like you were mentioning it earlier. So like you hashtag something on Instagram or something, and then it pulls that in and uses that art in some sort of live stream.
Right. So then they're basically using the hashtag to create a data viz, and the art itself is data viz of the collective experience. So that is done quite a bit, and we've seen lots of examples of that through art, especially for the last decade. I think we've seen less around massively collaborative art in virtual spaces. We've seen a few examples in Mozilla Hubs, in Second Life, in Minecraft, absolutely.
And are those examples that you could point me towards? Because I'm trying to actually collect really specific examples, because I want to actually, as much as I can, I want to actually see, see these and sort of get a sense of what's been done in the space, and start to actually like build a kind of a historical understanding of what has been done, what is possible.
Right. So I think the best thing to look at would be, for example, Burning Life or Burn 2 in Second Life. This is a 15-year process where tens of thousands of people have been actively engaged in creating the art for a virtual event. Because it's related to Burning Man, that's a specific.
But this is like a long. But this is more of like a long-term kind of generative process where people over months and years are kind of creating something.
It happens yearly. It happens yearly. It's a bit like Burning Man in that way. And the process to create is a little bit like Burning Man in that way. It's not as simple, I would say, as just going to a website and adding your piece of media. We've seen more marketing campaigns that do that. So let's say you just add your little 30-second video, and then it's included in a large compilation video or a music video. We've seen that, for example, what we built in 2014 around Affordable Care Act, those were short Vine videos. So we were just taking 6-second video clips, and this could be done during TikTok now, to come together and bring a massive story together using those very, very short video clips. That kind of storytelling tends to be most effective.
And how do I find, again, I'm very much about specific links and things I can find. How would I find that? How can I see that and watch it? And is that online somewhere?
Yeah, I'm gonna pull up I'm going to pull up a few examples for you right now. And
Awesome.
then
Thank you so much.
I would say, how much time have you spent in TikTok versus other platforms?
A little spot. No, I'm just kidding. Actually, I think TikTok's kind of cute or interesting. Very little. Like I've been a voyeur for probably a total of like 2 or 3 hours in my whole life, and it's kind of it's a world that it's kind of new for me.
It is. And so I do think you're going to want to dive into how to create campaigns on TikTok and how to work around. There's a couple of ways in which you can engage your audience using TikTok to basically become your media team. And that kind of play, because people will riff off of things very well in that environment, that tends to be a much better engagement rate than just about anything you're going to see elsewhere. Now, the bands that are using TikTok well tend to be not in America. So that's where I want to find you a good example from maybe the K-pop world. There's so many different examples, but I'm trying to figure out what would be the best ways to look at the creative side of how this works. So typically, like a TikTok challenge is it's a light form of user-generated content, right? So you're setting up the type of campaign, but it's pretty simplistic. Again, like you're trying to minimize the risk in the engagement itself. So let me show you. I don't know how much you've spent in the TikTok world, but BTS in particular. So doing these different challenges, the chicken noodle soup challenge and things like this. Most of these challenges are super simple, just to get people dancing around an action or a campaign. In some cases, it's really designed to help them tell their own story as well. So the band has a story they want to get out, and they want to encourage their audience to do something in particular. So, some of these are extremely just silly and playful, but some of them are more social impact driven. Some of them
But
are.
would you imagine though? Do you see this doing a TikTok challenge as kind of accomplishing the vision that I laid out of kind of this real-time music interactive music premiere?
So you can roll a TikTok challenge into something that is live, real time, created by the audience. It's almost like taking a 48-hour film festival approach to music video making and saying, okay, we all want you to be a part of our music videos this weekend. We're going to be giving you, the stream, the content, and we want you to go out there and, we're going to make a dance party all around the world with you. And we want to see, not just your best moves, but what makes you dance and why. What is it that connects you to our story? At the end of the day, that's the connection point you're trying to make. And it might have a secondary storyline based on the band and what they're trying to talk about.
Got it. Okay.
Yeah, but I do think you can use TikTok in this way. We've been using it for different types of creative collaborations in making. So getting makers to talk about what they're doing in real time. Same in food, getting people to all make the same recipe. We've been doing this on Twitch as well as on TikTok, right? So you can use these streaming media platforms in ways that you didn't expect. And then you're basically just taking the place where the audience already is and asking them to participate with you in a new way, capture that, and then taking that next level of media and making something meaningful out of it.
And what was the maker challenge that you mentioned? Is there a way I can check that out?
Here, let me find.
That sounds up my alley.
Yeah, so many of us who are makers just tend to stream while we're working. So some of that is it's more connected to the culture itself. So I have a few friends, we make wearables. I'm trying to figure out, because a lot of what we do is on Twitch, and Twitch makes videos disappear pretty fast. So part of, you know, in the experimental mode, going on Twitch, doing something live with 5 friends can feel less high risk. Yeah, but a lot of those things aren't necessarily saved for posterity long term unless we, you know, download the video and decide to save it or do something with it.
Not a thing you can easily just send a link for or something like that.
Right. Yeah. Yes. But using the stream or using the stream with other mechanisms can be very helpful. It sounds like you want to be able to send people to a website where they can actively engage with the content in real time and see each other. Is that right? Is there engagement between them, or is there engagement just with the information and the media?
Yeah, so it's a specific event at a specific time. It's a premiere of an album that would happen from 7 o'clock to 8 o'clock, you know, and in that time, people would go somewhere virtually. Where they go is open. I mean, ideally it'd be a website, because that's the lowest common denominator. And then they would be actively engaged in and immersed in some kind of unfolding experience. And that experience would be collaborative. It would be very much following the narrative and flow of the music and the content of the music, right? Obviously, the music would be playing live. And they would be part of something. Whether they are in a 3D space or a 2D space or a 2.5D space, all that is open, right? From Pixel Place all the way to Fortnite, you know, like I'm open to the whole. What I'm most interested in is this kind of real-time, large-scale, meaningful, collaborative, interactive, narrative-based process. That's what I'm really interested and excited about.
Narrative based, that's interesting. So that there is a story created by their interactions.
Yeah, and it doesn't have to be like a story like here's the beginning, middle, end, sort of like in that video we watched with the mouse cursors. There's a flow, right? It's not like an open space, like if you just showed up in a virtual world, like, oh, here you are, because the music has a flow. And so I think the general sense is there would be a kind of a moving flow. Like even if you watch what is his name again? The guy who did the Fortnite live music
Travis
premiere.
Scott?
You mentioned,
yeah,
Travis Scott. So even in that, you're in an open 3D space, but there's an unfolding narrative that's playing out, right, with the song. His avatar is changing, the environment is changing, all this stuff is kind of changing. And so that's what I mean by it's like there's a kind of you're part of something that's emerging.
I pulled up one site here thinking it might be useful for you. And now that I hear you speak, I want to like bring you into as immersive an experience as possible versus these 2D environments. So what you see here, Maestro, is really great if you needed to customize, let's say, an AI tool or a plugin, even like the Pixel Place or another art tool into your concert and have them all be in the same window. Maestro is almost like a white label Twitch, but you can also charge concert tickets and build in everything that you need for your concert here. So this allows you to develop basically those tags, those tabs and interactions just straight into the concert page. And any plugin that this particular tool can take, and it can take lots of different types of gaming plugins, but it's really designed for making interactive events that are more dynamic than just a straight up concert. However, it can't take all types of interactive experiences. It can take some types of games, and you can do different types of interactive overlays and different types of interactions that for example, could be wound up into something that is created for the whole window. So for example, you can have everyone participating in the same art, like in Pixel Place, and then that just becomes a feed that you flip between, along with, let's say, the concert and your social media, and you just create those feeds and switch between them, so people are participating in the show and it's all being created together. Maestro is a really nice platform for doing interactive concerts in particular. It works very well for anything that needs a paywall or ticketed experience. You can do it for free as well. Erykah Badu, I think, is a great example of an artist using this platform for something that feels like a premium living room home concert experience that still feels both intimate and participatory. So with that said, I don't know if you're going to be able to add the exact type of interaction that you want, right? Like if we're all going to work on the same video together, for example, would that work in this window? There are some types of what they have under Engage and Monetize. It includes different types of overlays, calls to action, panels that can include gaming and different types of things. You can add lots of what they call quests and achievements. So this operates almost like a cross between a virtual event platform and Twitch. So, but it is much easier to do the branding, ticketing. You get your engagement numbers at a pro level in your analytics. So if you're doing something with a label or a studio, that gives you a little bit more room to work, especially if you've got, someone else coming in to help sponsor the experience.
Cool.
Yeah.
Cool. This seems interesting to check out.
It's a good platform for, I would say, for signed talent that want to do something for a larger audience. It can keep the low bar to entry, like Erykah Badu is like charging $1 or $2 for her like entry fee. Other groups are using it to fundraise as well, to do benefit concerts and things like that. In the benefit concert model, they're then using the storytelling through both chat and social stories that are all around a theme. So let's say sustainability, regeneration, take your vision and make that vertical your story, and then figure out how you want people to play with that. Yeah, I realized I wanted to give you a few more examples on the way out, but I think you've had some really interesting ideas to explore. Have you seen many of the events happening, not just the Travis Scott and Fortnite stuff, but concerts in other 3D spaces? Have you gone to many of those yet?
No.
Okay, so you might want to look at some of what John Legend did recently and some of the other Wave VR experiences, because those do scale well. The challenge being that some of these are VR first or VR specific. And in this case, I don't think you want to do that, but it may create the right template for what you're trying to do. We've used, for example, Neos VR, and in Neos, it's like a 3D environment and it's very artistic. And so everyone can be making art and painting while they're at the concert in the virtual club, right? So again, what we were talking about with Second Life 15 years ago, these things are now happening in both cloud-based 3D environments like Mozilla Hubs or Nowhere, anything that's based in A-Frame as well. But they're also happening in a handful of these VR platforms. In Neos, the Wave VR is more of a passive experience, but certainly, like we talked a little bit about Fortnite, I would say most of these things are going to be happening in either Unity and Unreal, or using the frameworks under Mozilla Hubs. And that includes a platform that is now in beta that's being tested for large groups, and it's not available yet. But if you keep tracking in the XR industry, there are at least 2 platforms in development that are designed to do this, and that will be out probably in the next 3 months.
Interesting. And is that maybe those platforms would be interested in collaborating on a live premiere? Because this project is 6 to 9 months down the pipeline.
Absolutely. And I'm going to put you in touch with my friends who've been experimenting with XR Engine and some of these massive metaverse level experiments. And they're often using open source code, which is great. The challenge has often been around scalability and being able to do that effectively, given how many different types of devices we're all using right now, and that accessibility for your audience may be a huge factor. So we can talk more. I'm going to send you links to what some of our colleagues are working on behind the scenes in terms of future platforms. Cool. Certainly, like if your clients have the budget, or the bands you're working with have the budget, there are teams that specifically work in like the Fortnite field, who specifically work to Unity or who work to Unreal. And some of the metaverses in Burning Man, for example, were built that way. So if you have a couple of months, I mean, many festivals, I mean, if not just Burning Man, but like Lightning in a Bottle, decided to build their own apps. So that is the other way to go to make this sort of a radically participatory space where everyone has agency and power.
Mm-hmm. Cool.
Yeah.
Great stuff. Thank you, Eva.
Mikey, this has been fantastic. I'm going to drop off our stream, but thanks for dropping in and asking questions. And thanks so much for all the work that you do in terms of creativity and collaborative flow. I hope that whatever research you are discovering in this space, right? How do people actively do this creativity together with as little friction and as most joy as possible? Often the technology creates too much friction and not enough joy. And so balancing that for the people that you want to play with, I think is really the key. So Mikey, thank you. I'm going to go ahead and cut the stream. Have a wonderful day. And thank you from all of us here at Playable Agency. This is Evo Haining. You are welcome to reach out anytime. And I'll be back with open office hours next week. Please let me know if I can answer any of your questions. And I'm going to show you on the way out just a little bit of what we were working on this weekend with EdgeCut and Captivity, an art show that we ran in the beta world called Nowhere, which was built in Brooklyn. EdgeCut was a global art show, and we started building this show, let's say, not even a week ago. So I want you to see just a little bit of what that looked like. And again, thank you to Mikey Siegel and to all of our friends from those of us here at Playable Agency. Thank you for joining us.
First light breaking dawn. I feel for your body, but you are gone.
It's so peaceful out here. It is like the perfect meditative
Breath escapes
space.
these lungs and it